गुड मॉर्निंग स्टूडेंट्स। पिछले क्लास में आपने कंट्रोल एंड कोऑर्डिनेशन बायो चैप्टर का देखा। अबाउट द कंट्रोल एंड कंडीशन, व्हाट इज कंट्रोल एंड कोऑर्डिनेशन, व्हाट इज इट्स इम्पोर्टेंस इन परफॉर्मिंग द डिफरेंट कंट्रोलिंग activities over the physiological activities, what is the basic unit, what is neuroendocrine. Today we will discuss some important point regarding the control and coordination, which is very essential to us. As for example, first of all, a stimulus. A stimulus is very important as it acts as an agent or factor, or simply we can say that a stimulus means any change in the environment which affect the organism. That change which affect the organism to do accordingly or showing the response, that is called a stimulus. So a stimulus is an agent, factor or change in the external or internal environment which brings about a reaction in the organism. It means any change that may be externally or that may be internally. Externally change, as for example, suppose you can observe it in your daily life activities. When we enter in the room is dark. When we light on or switch on the light, if a cockroach is there or in the room, it will moves away from the light. This light acts as a stimulus, here for the cockroach, and moving away from the light, that is the response which is created as they receive the stimulus from the external environment. So this is very essential. So response, the another term, that is response, which is related or which is based on the stimulus. So response is the reaction of the organism to a stimulus. रेस्पॉन्स क्या है? रेस्पॉन्स उस स्टिमुलस के अगेंस्ट में उसका रिएक्शन है. जैसे कॉकरोच डार्क में रहता है और जब लाइट, ब्रॉड लाइट अचानक आ जाने से दे कीप देमसेल्व्स अवे फ्रॉम द लाइट. दिस इज देयर रेस्पॉन्स. हियर द लाइट एक्ट एज ए स्टिमुलस. सो a stimulus and response are interrelated. Response is dependent upon a stimulus. So for perceiving a stimuli and providing response, the nervous system requires receptors and effectors. Now the question is, for the this stimulus and response act as or requires needed two things, that is the one is receptors and the other is effector. You must understand what is receptor and effector. Receptors means the cells or tissues which receives the stimulus, particular stimuli from the environment that are received by the tissue or cells. As for example, suppose the all sense organs act as receptors: eyes, nose, ear, skin, tongue. These organs are acts as receptors. So these are the cells, tissue and organs which are capable of receiving particular stimuli and initiate impulses to be picked up by the sensory nerve. It means the receptors receive the stimulus and it is conveyed as an electrical impulses via sensory nerve. So the work of receptor is to receive the stimuli. All the sense organs act as receptors. In our daily life activities, you observe it. And effectors are the muscles and gland. As for example, when our hand or leg or any body part touches with hot and cold object, we draw it immediately as a response. So the effectors, as you know, that any movement taking place in our body is due to muscles. Due to contraction and relaxation of muscles, the movement takes place. So effector and receptors receive the stimulus, and effector through sensory nerve in the form of impulse. It is conveyed via sensory nerve, and effector do the work accordingly. The secretion work, the movement work, और whatsoever is, जो भी किसी तरह का जो भी काम है. Effector are muscles, gland, tissues or cells which act as a response to a message received from the nervous system. So neuromuscular system, all the muscles are joined by the nerves so that they can receive the impulse and do accordingly, और उसके हिसाब से वो काम करता है. नाउ द ट्रांसमिशन, आपने देखा कि द बेसिक यूनिट ऑफ नर्वस सिस्टम. सो नर्वस टिश्यू इज मेड अप ऑफ ए स्पेशल टाइप ऑफ सेल दैट इज कॉल्ड न्यूरॉन सेल. सो द न्यूरॉन सेल is the basic unit. Here the transmission of nerve impulse is a self-propagated electrical current that runs along the surface of the nerve fiber for passage of information. So whatever or whenever the stimulus is received by the receptors, it is conveyed to the brain, spinal cord, through spinal cord to the brain for the response is in the form of electrical impulse along a nerve fiber. नर्व फाइबर के द्वारा, सेंसरी नर्व के द्वारा या मोटर नर्व के द्वारा इस चीज़ को, इम्पल्स को कन्वे किया जाता है, स्टिमुलस को. So the pathway followed by the nerve impulse in the body is given below. First of all, स्टिमुलस क्या है? ये हमारा एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर है. रिसेप्टर रिसीव किया उसको. डेंड्राइट ऑफ द सेंसरी न्यूरॉन, आपने देखा था कि डेंड्राइट जो है ये फाइबर लाइक जो स्ट्रक्चर्स है ये डेंड्राइट है. दीज आर कैपेबल टू रिसीव द स्टिमुलस इन द फॉर्म ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिकल इम्पल्स. ये डेंड्राइट इसको रिसीव किया. डेंड्राइट डेंड्राइट ऑफ द सेंसरी न्यूरॉन. Then cell body is the main cellular part of the nerve cell. Then the terminal part or long elongated part of the neuron cell, that is axon. Cell body, then to axon. Then synapse means the gap between two nerve cells. As you know that the one nerve is not as long as our height, so it must be interrelated or connected to another neuron. So the dendrite is synapse मतलब गैप, दो न्यूरॉन सेल के बीच में जो गैप होगा उसको हम क्या कहते हैं? सिनेप्स कहते हैं. Then dendrite of other neuron. then cell body of another neuron, various neuron, CNS, central nervous system, dendrite of motor neuron, then cell body, then axon, then effector. Effectors are muscles or gland. As it has been already discussed, receptors and effectors. The work of receptor is to receive, and the work of effector is to do or show response. Synapse, a small gap between two adjacent neurons where the nerve impulse passes from one neuron to another neuron in one direction, that is called synapse. So simply we can say the gap between the two neuron cells is called synapse. At the end of the neuron action, the electrical impulse causes the release of some chemical called neurotransmitter. Now, if there is a gap between the two neurons, how does it possible to convey the electrical impulse from one nerve cell to another nerve cells? So, this gap must be filled with some chemical substance. These chemical substances are capable in or helping in conveying the impulse from one neuron to another neuron in one direction. आगे पिक्चर से क्लियर करेंगे इसको. These chemicals cross the gaps, that is synapse, and start a similar impulse in the dendrite to other next neuron. Here this is your system, this is your gap, that is called synapse. The axon, presynaptic knob, pre means पहले, presynaptic knob, synaptic vesicles. These vesicles are filled with some neurotransmitter, some chemicals, and they are able to release or fill this gap by this neurosecretion. Neurotransmitter molecules are secreted and filling the gap so as the electrical impulse easily conveyed from one neuron to another neuron in one direction. This is the way. Synaptic cleft. This gap is called synaptic cleft. Postsynaptic membrane. This is another neuron, and this chemical is called neurotransmitter molecules. Neuro related to nerve. Transmitter is help in transmission or mean transport of impulse. This is why that it is called neurotransmitter molecules. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a chemical compound which is released by this synaptic vesicles during and filling the gap between the two neurons, that is synapse, and acetylcholine acts as a neurotransmitter for the transmission of electrical impulse. So now another term is neuromuscular junction. As its term indicates, neuromuscular, it means the association between the muscles and nerves is called neuromuscular junctions. The point where a muscle's fiber comes in contact with the motor neuron carrying nerve impulse from CNS. CNS, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord together called central nervous system, or form or constitute central nervous system. So this is the joining part of the motor neuron and the muscles. The neurotransmitter for the transmission of nerve impulse from neuron to the muscle fiber released in the same way as impulse are transmitted across a synapse between the two neurons. Here टू न्यूरॉन्स के बीच में जो न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर रिलीज होता है, सिमिलरली मसल्स और फाइबर के बीच के जो गैप हैं वहाँ भी यही रिलीज होता है न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर दैट हेल्प इन कन्वेइंग द impulses across the nerve fiber. Now the types of nervous action. reflex action, next part it will be discussed, because it is very it becomes very difficult to upload when it becomes too long. Thank you.